Let's listen to a couple clips of Dr. James White. And shame on James White for not looking more into the issues of Bible prophecy. So he's gonna in a dismissive manner sort of mock the idea of the beasts that rise up and the horns and the 10-headed beast and all this stuff. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Anyways, I've seen this come and go. I've seen people saying you just need to look to what the Bible says to be able to discern what's happening in the Middle East, and the 10 nations of the European Union is a 10-headed beast, and that means this is going to happen. Yeah, been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. So this is not the way to handle dispensational futurism and apologetics towards the dispensational futurist system. I break down the 5 main false teachings of the dispensational futurist eschatological system. And of course, Israel, point 4 here, the modern nation state that calls itself Israel, has a pivotal role to play according to the dispensational futurists in Bible prophecy. And of course, that is based on a 7 years left of Daniel's prophetic calendar of Daniel 9:24 through 27, and the famous 70 weeks, or 490 literal years. You're utilizing the day equals year principle here, which they say has not been fulfilled and is still seeking future fulfillment. And only during this time will the future Mr. Diabolical called Antichrist arise to power. Well, the Antichrist is called the sea beast in Revelation 13. The Antichrist is called the sea beast of Revelation 13. I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, blasphemous names on its head. The dragon, that is Satan, gave his power and his throne. Does Satan have a throne that he gives to the Antichrist? Yes. And great authority. Its mortal wound was healed. If you worship like the beast tells you to worship, then you are actually worshiping the dragon. You see that? Verse 4, they worshiped the dragon. They worshiped the beast. Okay? With a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words. That's false doctrine, false dogma. Continued for 42 months. That is also day equals year. This is historicism as opposed to preterism and futurism. So Jonathan Edwards, historicist, says 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, the man of sin, son of perdition, is the Antichrist. Daniel chapter 7, the little horn, the other horn which came up, the before whom 3 fell, and the horn had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things. Same thing as Revelation 13 that we just looked at. And the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. This is the Antichrist, the little horn of Daniel 7. Revelation 13. Revelation 13. Open his mouth to blasphemy against God. That's what we already looked at in his tabernacle. It was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. See that? And continued for 42 months, or 1260 literal years. And then Revelation 17 he cites here too. That's the scarlet harlot. Same entity. It's the Antichrist. And all 4 of these texts are the main texts that talk about the Antichrist. Let's go up. The time when the reign of Antichrist began, the 1260 days or years. You see that? Jonathan Edwards says years. That is what is being referred to in Revelation 13, verse 5, the 42 months. Also, Revelation chapter 12, I'm scrolling back up here, verse 14, a time, times, and half a time. That'll be the same description of the little horn in Daniel chapter 7. This is the woman who flees into the wilderness for a time, times, half a time, to be nourished for 1260 literal years. Revelation 12, that's the church. And then Revelation 11, the 2 witnesses, 1260 years. That's what Jonathan Edwards was talking about, the 42 months, 1260 days, or time times half a time. All the same time prophecy. Here is obviously the man of sin, son of perdition, will continue all the way up until the Lord Jesus kills him with the breath of his mouth and bring to nothing by the appearance of his coming at his second advent. That means the Antichrist goes on and reigns in power and has power all the way up until the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our being gathered together to him. This is the second advent. This is the second advent. His coming is the second advent. But here in Daniel chapter 7 is where we really get the breakdown. He sees 4 beasts that come up out of the sea. Another beast, right? One beast, lion. Second one, like a bear, raised up on one side, 3 ribs in its teeth. The third beast, leopard beast. The fourth beast, the terrifying and dreadful beast with iron teeth. And it has 10 horns, 3 of which will be plucked up by the roots before this little horn would arise to power. And all the way down to verse 25, the little horn would put down the 3 kings, speak words against the Most High, wear out the saints of the Most High, and they will continue the Antichrist will continue for a time, times, and half a time. There you go. There's your 1260 years that Jonathan Edwards was talking about. So let's see. I'm going to go on a little bit and play another clip, and we're going to look at those beasts. But here's one more clip, about 34:27-ish.
Did you see Ukraine coming? How about COVID? Did you see COVID coming?
A lot of people saw Ukraine coming because this has been Putin's goal ever since he took power in about 1999. He's been in power through 5 American presidents. And this has been his goal, to seal up those access points into Greater Russia. All of those access points are now, well, a lot of them are in actually NATO countries now. So he can't seal them up unless he takes those countries.
See WEF?
I think every year people see the WEF, don't they?
Are these some of the beasts maybe we missed in Revelation?
Whoops.
Maybe they're in Daniel somewhere.
Yeah.
Is that what we've got going on here?
Yeah.
You cannot, in good Christian
see, he's talking against dispensational futurists and their endless speculations regarding these beasts. Okay, but we don't need to speculate. We don't need to speculate. Here, what rough beasts and the Antichrist? What rough beasts and the Antichrist? The little horn of Daniel 7 is the Antichrist. Futurism says Antichrist will only appear on the scene in a future time after a pre-trib rapture and only during a mythical 7 years of Earth's history. So a future Mr. Diabolical. Preterism, Antichrist was a single solitary individual human being. Or maybe Antichrist was a series of pagan Roman emperors before the fall of the Roman Empire who persecuted the church. Before the fall of the Roman, that's preterism. Okay, preterism, Antichrist in the past, futurism, Antichrist in the future. But that's not what Daniel chapter 7 teaches. We're going to go through all 4 of these beasts that rise up out of the sea very quickly, paralleling Daniel chapter 2 and the metal man of Daniel chapter 2. So the first one was the Babylonian Empire, and I give the dates here. Daniel was living in the Babylonian Empire. The next one is, Daniel actually lived to see the overthrow of the Babylonian Empire by the Medo-Persian Empire. And so the various and sundry decrees of Medo-Persian kings would go out to allow the Jews to leave their Babylonian exile and go back to the province beyond the river, that is, to Judah or Judea. Raised up on one side, 3 ribs in its teeth. The 3 ribs likely refers to the 3 major conquests of the Medo-Persian Empire, namely over Lydia, over Babylon, 539 BC. That's why I start the Medo-Persian Empire at 539 BC, because it usurped the empire that was before it in 539 BC. And then, of course, a victory over Egypt in 525 BC. And then the rise of the Grecian Empire, okay? Under the conquest of Alexander the Great. And of course, Hellenization, very important for this time, for the writing of the New Testament during the Roman Empire. And of course, Christ would be conceived, born, baptized, do his 3 to 3.5 year earthly ministry in fulfillment of Daniel chapter 7 or Daniel chapter 9, 24 through 27 in the 70 weeks. Jesus fulfilled the first half of that last week. And then the apostles fulfilled the second 3 to 3.5 years of that 70th week, and it ended at the stoning of Stephen. But here is the Roman Empire. The little horn, the Antichrist, would not arise until after the fall of the Roman Empire. Do we go into our Edwards quote? The 1260 days or years did not commence before the year of Christ 479. That is, before the fall of the Roman Empire. The Antichrist rose after the fall of the Roman Empire, and when it did, it continued on for 1260 literal years. So what are these 10 horns that arose out of the fourth empire, the Roman Empire? These symbolize the 10 tribal kingdoms that made up the Roman Empire after its fall in 476 AD. I give this list. I think this is the best list. 3 of these would be plucked up by the roots before the little horn could rise to power. Here is a quotation, citation from Dr. John Gill, a Reformed Baptist theologian over in England. He says in Daniel 7, the 10 horns are 10 kingdoms which sprung out of the Roman Empire upon the dissolution of it about AD 476. Same thing as Jonathan Edwards. He gives Meade's list, very similar to my own. Dr. Gill gives Sir Isaac Newton's list, very similar to my own. So we're all seeing things the same way here as historicists. We may differ in minute details, but we're still seeing this the same way. Okay, this horn made war with the saints and prevailed over them for that 1260 years. The 3 horns that were uprooted before the little horn could rise to power were the Heruli, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths. I give a basic outline of the plucking up of these 3 horns. These were all 3 of these horns, by the way, of these lesser tribal kingdoms that made up the Roman Empire. These were held to the Christological heresy known as Arianism. These were Arian horns that were plucked up by the roots. And so the Antichrist, I have argued, had to be Trinitarian. It had to be Trinitarian. If the Antichrist was going to sit in the temple of God in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, then it had to be Trinitarian, right? To sit in the temple of God. The man of sin, son of perdition. It could not hold to the Arian heresy or any Unitarian, Sabellian, modalistic monarchianism. It couldn't hold to any of the Christological heresies that the church had already dealt with before the fall of the Roman Empire. It had to be Trinitarian. And the Antichrist is Trinitarian. You know what is restraining this man of sin, son of perdition? That is the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was the restraining the man of sin from coming onto the scene. Here's, again, back to Daniel 7. Put down 3 kings, time times half a time. There's that 1260-year time period for the reign of the Antichrist. Again, the other horn that came up had a mouth speaking great things, made war with the saints, and prevailed over them. Okay, just like Revelation 13, 1 through 10, the sea beast. This is the same entity as the little horn of Daniel 7. What does Jonathan Edwards say? How did the Antichrist gain so much power in the church after the fall of the Roman Empire? The rise of Antichrist was gradual, says Jonathan Edwards. The Christian church corrupted itself in many things presently after Constantine's time, growing more and more superstitious in its worship, and by degrees bringing in many ceremonies into the worship of God, till at length they brought in the worship of saints and set up images in their churches. Okay, the clergy in general, but especially the Bishop of Rome, assumed more and more authority to himself. Okay, then he goes through some ecclesiology. In primitive times, he was a minister of a congregation, then a standing moderator of a presbytery, then a diocesan bishop, then a metropolitan, which is equivalent to an archbishop, then a patriarch, and afterwards he claimed power of universal bishop over the whole Christian church. See that? Nowhere is that in the Bible. That is all unbiblical ecclesiology. Okay? That's why ecclesiology is important as an area of systematic theology. He was opposed for a while, but afterwards was confirmed in it by the civil power of the emperor. After that, in 606, after that, he claimed the power of a temporal prince, and so was wont to carry 2 swords to signify that both the temporal and spiritual sword were his. Now keep an eye on that. The temporal sword was his. In my What Rough Beasts, we see the 1260 years must start after 3 horns are plucked up by the roots. I begin in 538 AD. 538 AD. Okay? Because watch, in 1798 AD, all you have to do is add 1260 years to 538 AD, and you come up to 1798 AD, and something pivotal happened in 1798. The First French Republic troops, under the command of Napoleon Bonaparte, invaded Italy, defeated the papal troops, and occupied. Pope Pius VI sued for peace, but in a riot, papal forces, papal forces blamed on Italian and French revolutionaries. The popular brigadier general, who had gone to Rome with Joseph Bonaparte as part of the French, was killed, and a new pretext was furnished for invasion. So General Berthier marched to Rome and entered it unopposed in 1798, and proclaiming a Roman republic, right, demanded the Pope renounce his temporal power. Okay? So check out what Edward says. This is part of the papal assertion of his own power, claiming that both the temporal and spiritual sword were his. Okay? That was undone when the French usurped, specifically in this case Pope Pius VI, but it was seen as a deadly wound on the papacy in 1798, the papal Antichrist. Jonathan Edwards says, emperors, right? Let's see. He was used to be called God on earth, to be submitted to by all the princes of Christendom. He claimed power to crown princes and to degrade them at his pleasure. And this power was owned. It was owned by him. Owned. Oh, boy. I just erased all my stuff. That is not good. Oh, I just erased all my stuff. That is not good. I'm going to have to redo this now. Oh. Jonathan Edwards, Volume 1. Come on, I hope it's still there. You've got to be kidding me. I don't want to go in there and highlight everything that I just did, down to period 3. Down to part 4. To the Reformation. Oh, good. Yes. Oh, man. Oh, you could just tell, man. That was anxiety right there, because I wanted my highlights. So here, degrade them. The emperors received their crowns at his hands. So this power was owned by him. If the Pope was pleased to excommunicate a prince, all his subjects were at once freed from their allegiance to him and obliged not to own him anymore, not to own their own king, their own prince, by the Pope. Further, the Pope was believed to have power to damn men at his pleasure, so that they looked upon themselves as certainly damned. If the Pope, several emperors were actually deposed and ejected and died miserably by the Pope's means, and if the people of any state or kingdom did not please the Pope had the power to lay that state or kingdom under an interdict, which was a sentence pronounced by the Pope against that state or kingdom, whereby all sacred administrations would have no validity, no baptisms, no sacraments, till that interdict was taken off, so that people remained in their apprehension. This is how the Antichrist conquered them, made war against them, and conquered them by speaking false words, false doctrine, false dogma, that the Pope had any kind of authority to do anything regarding any sinner's salvation. But in their apprehension, in their minds, it left them in a damnable state, and therefore they all dreaded it as they would a storm of fire and brimstone from heaven. So as the Pope and his clergy robbed the people of their ecclesiastical and civil liberties and privileges, What does the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights in the United States do? Yeah, protects your ecclesiastical liberties and your civil liberties, specifically that of free speech, freedom of the press, freedom to report, observe and report. That's our freedom in the First Amendment of our Bill of Rights in the United States. Ecclesiastical privileges, absolutely. That's what you have. That's why it was so radical that we have a Bill of Rights and deliverance out of purgatory. See how all this agrees with the prophecies. All this about the papacy agrees with the prophecies of the Antichrist and all these texts. So that's how you handle eschatology, or how you at least begin to handle eschatology. Okay, you don't have to mock it, because you're mocking dispensational. James is mocking dispensational futurism, which I would too, but you can't do that without providing a proper alternative, and that's not what James has. He has preterism / postmillennialism. Okay, now this specific video was about Israel specifically, and I've already done videos on Israel, but this is about the beasts and the Antichrist. So shame on Dr. White for taking that particular view. I wish he would just simply look into these prophecies more. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. We'll talk to you soon. Soli Deo Gloria.